For decades, the religious right has been the most visible, politically active wing of the Christian community. But beginning with the election of Pope Francis, that may be changing. Joining us are Reverend Cedric Harmon of the group Many Voices and Reverend Counsel Nedd, rector of St. Albans Anglican Church in Pine Grove Mills, Pennsylvania, and he's also with Project 21. Good to have you both joining me today to talk about this issue. So the religious component of, how do I even want to do this? All right. It's been an argument that I've had for years with people, but religion somehow got hijacked by the right. I don't know when it happened, but it did.
I'm not buying your premise, but I'll let you go ahead.
But you'll let me finish
yes.
with my... It did, and somehow those who were considered left or progressive were considered to be non-Christians or non-faithful people, that the only faithful people were the religious right. And I've argued to liberals for years, why are you allowing religion to be hijacked by the other party? You know, there are plenty of faithful who are considered liberals, but that voice has been nowhere in the debate.
Well, Angela, going back to 1950, with the formation of the National Council of Churches of Christ, there was a very strong presence of voices that were very considered and very thoughtful, and one could say somewhat progressive and liberal. And then you come to 1989, and you have the formation of the Christian Coalition with Reverend Pat Robertson and Ralph Reed, which took a very strong voice and was very powerful as the decline of the voices of the National Council of Churches occurred. You know, and also for African Americans, we had 1966, 1967, the formation of the National Committee for Negro Churchmen, which started the Black Liberation Movement. So there were several instances where the voices of religion have ebbed and flowed. This is a reality in our culture and in our climate.
Oh, I know you're ready to get on me.
I've got a few things to say about this. I don't necessarily agree with your characterization in that sort of way. The way I view it is this. So, yeah, I'm a Christian pastor. If I'm going to claim to be a Christian pastor, I'm going to have to believe in our Christian scriptures. You know, I'm not just pulling sort of facts and things out of the air. You know, our Christian text goes back several thousand years, and either you adhere to it or you don't. And if you've got pastors who are supposed to be setting the social and moral standard for the community, for the country, for your church or whatever, either you're going to adhere to it or you're not. And all I'm doing is adhering to Scripture and teaching the faith that was passed down through generations. Where my new friend here gets into trouble is saying, well, you know, I believe this portion of Scripture, but I don't believe this. I believe this, but I don't believe this. And also, by the way, I'm going to let sort of the political influences of society interfere with what I preach from the pulpit on Sunday, and that's problematic.
I would have to say that we all approach Scripture through the lens of interpretation.
Exactly.
This is the reality of how we approach Scripture. I would not suggest that we are picking and choosing. I'm saying that we're interpreting Scripture in our place and our time.
Right, because from your perspective, you could be accused of picking and choosing as well.
Well, the religion that I practice today is the same religion that, you know, Anglicans have practiced for the better part of 2,000 years.
But wouldn't that be the case of the religion that you're practicing?
And that is also true. The reality is there is a diversity of opinion and religious viewpoint in this country. And what I tried to point out earlier is that there is an ebb and flow as some voices come to the fore and get more coverage and other voices decline. But that does not mean that we are not both Christians, believers in Jesus Christ.
Well, either you believe in the inherency of Scripture, meaning that it is truth, or it's not. So you don't have that luxury of picking and choosing. Well, this is a sin this year, but this isn't a sin next year.
So, but here's something I found. The culture wars, and especially with the resurgence of the papacy and Pope Francis, the culture wars are not what people are hanging their hats on anymore. Gay marriage is here. LGBT workplace rights, an executive order is about to be signed, and on and on and on. So the culture wars that used to be sort of the context in which the religious right, the right rather, approached issues, it's just not there anymore. Furthermore, millennials, they have a totally different perspective and understanding of what they want in their world, and 70+% of them are concerned about unemployment, with only 20-something% concerned about abortion and other rights.
Right.
And that's another thing, our reproductive rights.
But if you look at it this way, pastors are supposed to be standard bearers, not necessarily willing or caving to the trends of modern society. Somebody's got to say, you know what, this is okay, this is fine, this is a line that we're not going to cross, and somebody needs to hold that standard, because what happens is the standard gets dumbed down continually until, you know, you end up in a situation, unfortunately, I'd say like we have today.
I'd like to suggest that the essential standards of the Christian message of Jesus Christ, of love, compassion, justice, are still those same standards by which we all should measure ourselves. As a matter of fact, 60% of Catholics today believe that we should be speaking to the social justice and to the issues of the poor, that these obligations are essential to the Christian message. And Pope Francis is also saying that. So what I'm saying to you is, as the culture evolves, we need to speak to the issues of the day, yes, and we need to hold to justice, fairness, love, and compassion, which is the essential message of the gospel.
But that's what you pick. But, you know, nobody necessarily disagrees that we need to care for the poor and the needy. Nobody's disagreeing with that. But there are a lot of other issues that have been tenets of our Christian faith or our Judeo-Christian heritage since its inception. And just because the president's decided that, you know, gay marriage needs to be the law of the land, that doesn't mean the pastors need to say, okay, well, yes, we'll sign off on this for you, Pharaoh.
And thus we have religious liberty in this country, whereby persons of different opinion can hold those differences of opinion, and we can live in a fair, equitable society where the brother can speak his view, we can speak our view, and we can all exist and coexist fairly.
So there are different views of Christianity, and it seems like you're saying, no, there's one view. And I understand you're saying there are multiple ways to interpret it, but you seem very much so.
Well, the standard that I go by is what's in Scripture, what's in the Holy Bible.
Well, but is that
now,
not
I
what
can't
you're
go
going
by and pick and choose and say, well, you know, I only believe in 4 of the 10 commandments.
I don't think that's what you're saying at all.
Not at all. As a matter of fact, again, I am standing to the standards of compassion, love, and justice, and seeking justice, which means we have to be concerned about the poor, we have to be concerned about poverty, and fair treatment of all of God's creation. And I have to say that gay and lesbian persons, bisexual and transgender persons are God's creation.
Absolutely.
I'm not saying that they're not God's creation.
So,
go ahead.
So then, from your church's perspective, how do we deal with the LGBT community? How does your affiliation with the Anglican Church deal with the LGBT community? Do you have members of that community in your church?
I have plenty of gay friends. I don't have any gay members in my church that I know of, but then again, it's not my business, in my opinion. What I'm concerned with is, one, when I come there on Sunday, that people receive Holy Communion and that I preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. You know, I treat everybody the same that comes into my church. We're supposed to love our neighbor. We're supposed to love our neighbor as ourselves. But that doesn't mean calling sin, putting a different face on it just because it's trendy today.
I would suggest that
I don't think being gay is trendy, or the LGBT community. I don't see that as trendy.
No, but what's happened in the last, say, 2 decades is that everybody says, well, you know, God made me this way. God makes people a lot of ways. God makes thieves, God makes murderers, God makes all sorts of people. And just because it's now trendy to say something's not sinful or something's not in comportment with Holy Scripture and something's not in comportment with 2,000 years of Christian tradition, all because, you know, it's politically trendy or the president says it's okay, doesn't mean it's not what it is.
I disagree with the characterization that this is about being trendy. I think that we recognize that since the writing of Scripture 2,000 years ago, there's information and knowledge we have about human sexuality that the writers of Scripture simply did not have. We also recognize that when you're treating people fairly, you don't label them as sin. You understand and you seek to give them the opportunity to live a fulfilled life.
So we don't call murderers murderers,
and we
don't call thieves
and we
thieves.
speak into their lives, and we invite them to a level of responsibility and relationship with God equal and equivalent to that we ask of heterosexual persons.
But again, so we know a lot of information about the brain that we didn't know when the writers of Scripture wrote Scripture. And, you know, psychologists and psychiatrists can look at a portion of your brain and say, well, this person's inclined to become a thief. This person's inclined to become a murderer. Yes, we have an obligation to love that individual, but they're still what they are.
I believe in the transformative power of love.
And so do I.
And so therefore I would not compare a murderer and a thief with a person who is simply trying to live their lives honestly and authentically as they are created by God.
Reverend Cedric Harmon, thank you so much. And Reverend Counsel Nedd, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a very spirited yet very sophisticated discussion, might I add, the kind we like here on DC Breakdown. Thank you so much. And I know you came all the way from Pennsylvania, so you know we really appreciate you.
Thanks so much for having me on.
All right, thank you.